Hey y'all, welcome to Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin. I'm Mandy. I'm just a mom sitting down having real conversations with real Texas parents about what's going on in our schools. Today, we're joined by Representative Briscoe Cain from House District 128, a father of five, a homeschooling father of five. Representative Cain, thanks for joining us.
Howdy, Mandy.
So, what are we learning about today?
Today, we're going to discuss a topic that I believe is going to revolutionize the lives of children and parents in Texas.
Amen. Let's talk all about empowering parents with education savings accounts. So let's start with, as a father of five young children that are in their elementary years, why is it so important? Why do you see the need to, as you said yourself, revolutionize this next generation so that they have access to a great education? What was the impetus for your support of empowering parents with education savings accounts?
Yeah, well, first off, it kind of, I guess, began with me and my wife's decision to homeschool our children. That came after some long conversations, but mostly of meeting children who were, I guess, not kids anymore, that were homeschooled and being so impressed by their lives and realizing that because of that different option, they were educated differently. And I don't know, I was impressed by how their parents raised them. I was impressed with the way they think, that they're problem solvers, that they question the status quo. And so we made that decision, and I think other parents should be able to have it. I recognize that everybody maybe can afford it, and it's not easy for us having five children, but we care enough, and I know other parents wish they had that same opportunity, whether that's using ESAs for a private school or homeschool options.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I have seen that as well. I don't homeschool. I send my children to an amazing classical charter school, but I do have several family members who make that choice as well. And the reason I chose that classical model is because those children that are in the classical model learn to reason. They learn to spot logical fallacies. They learn to have discernment. And you need that, in my opinion, now more than ever, with a constant inundation of misinformation, fake news, social media that's full of just straight up propaganda. Mm-hmm. So I'm with you. I think that more children need to be able to learn the same skills that oftentimes we do see in our homeschooling community, which is one of the reasons, I pulled this up, is that the Homeschool Coalition, the Texas Homeschool Coalition, the largest homeschooling community in Texas, are standing with you and standing with Representative James Frank and standing with other homeschool parents to say we need to empower all kids, all families, with the ability to select the best education for their child, whether it is a homeschool or a private school or a great public school down the street.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, the entire idea of giving options is to give all the options on the table.
Yeah.
And this bill needs to be universal.
Yeah.
Granted, I think you're, in a way, by discussing or recognizing that there are some minority of homeschool families who oppose this, but I think it's misguided, and maybe they don't really fully understand that it's not a problem for homeschoolers. At least in every other state that has ESAs, we've seen no new regulation of homeschoolers. Mm-hmm. It's just something that's not realistic, and I don't really fully understand why, especially if it's opt-in, why some homeschool families don't want others to have opportunity when no one's making them have an ESA.
I think that's a great point, and I get asked that a lot. We don't want it, and as someone with a very healthy distrust of government, I understand that, and we fully support that. If you don't want to participate and utilize an education savings account, don't. But something that I keep thinking about is what we're seeing right now and the shift to the left that we're seeing culturally, not just in our schools, but just in society as a whole. And I had someone last week, a father, come up to me and say, there's no strings attached now, right? That's the word. There's no strings. There's no regulations. We understand that it's in there to protect homeschoolers as well as the autonomy of the parents and any private schools that are participating. But that always comes. And I said, look, I understand what you're saying, but let me ask you, sir, what is stopping homeschools from being regulated now? And he said, the law. And I said, yeah, who makes the law? He said, the legislators. And I said, that's right. Do you know what happens if the makeup of the legislative body completely shifts to the left? And he said, I bet we won't have as many homeschool protections. And I was like, that's it. We've got to completely change the trajectory of where Texas is headed, in my opinion, because this leftist indoctrination is absolutely going on in our schools.
Yeah. Well, one great way to protect homeschooling is to increase the number of homeschoolers. One great way to increase the number of homeschoolers, the people that appreciate that option, would be through the passage of a universal ESA bill.
Right.
Then you have more advocates.
Oh, that couldn't say it better myself. So let's talk a little bit about what we saw last year, particularly in the closing of the fourth special session, and why you think this year, the 89th legislative session, looks a lot different.
Yeah, well, following the issues that we saw with the bill during the last special session, I think people learned a lot of things. They were shown things. Maybe they'd questioned the polling. They questioned whether or not their district wanted it or not. They learned that the opposition in their district wasn't from parents. It was probably from school board members and superintendents and education bureaucrats. I think they now understand that this is not just something that parents want, that it's the right thing to do. Again, it truly is the civil rights issue of our time. Some people forget that kids today are stuck inside zip codes, just like we saw litigation during school desegregation of children still being stuck inside zip codes. They're doing it again, and the legislature needs to step up and fix it.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And I really do hope that you and your colleagues, there will be several new ones. You have many new colleagues coming in. There was absolutely a revolution that occurred when parents, who I think became the largest voting bloc, went out and said, we want to be the ultimate decision maker for our child's education.
And look, liberty kind of comes with sometimes some problems. I see on Twitter, the left will say, well, then that means if a parent is getting the ESA and they're progressive, it means they could teach their kids about a certain subject. And the reality is yes, and that's their children. And I hope more and more people recognize, like, that's your kid. You get to teach them what you want. And yeah, that is what we're advocating for.
Right.
It means that someone could teach something I wouldn't teach my kid, but it's their child, and it's not the government mandating it. They have that choice.
That's it. I hear that all the time, and I think, we can't legislate good parenting. We can't. We can't legislate good parenting. We can't legislate good teaching or good citizenship, but we can provide that pathway to freedom that our nation was founded upon, which would be for individuals to make the best choices for themselves and their own family. And it has resulted in, America being the greatest and most benevolent, but also Texas, the Texas miracle, right? The 8th largest economy in the entire world, where that people pursue their own dreams and business is thriving because of it. We want to see that in the education sector as well.
Absolutely. This is the one area I think Florida is beating us, and no more.
And no more.
Tired of it. Florida, just no reason for them to be number one in education with universal ESAs. It's time for Texas to do it and do it even better.
I love that you say that. Our listeners, for those that don't realize, when Florida passed private school choice they passed it in 2002 and implemented it in 2003, their low-income demographic, meaning those most vulnerable students that oftentimes get left behind, they ranked number 33 in the nation on the NAEP scores. That is considered the nation's report card. And within just 16 years of introducing private school choice, the entire system got better, and Florida ranks number 1 today. And I'm with you. I'm competitive. I don't like seeing Florida beat Texas in anything. I want to take that number 1 spot back for sure. Or just not even back. I want to take it. I want to go and claim that prize for our kids.
There's time. And hopefully next session we begin the ball rolling in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So something else that I want to talk about here. Recently, we did an analysis, because oftentimes when we're talking about the spending, right, you'll hear a lot of different numbers thrown around. And it can be confusing for the public, and it can be confusing for legislators.
It's confusing for us, yeah.
Right, when you've got a bunch of different entities and people coming out. So we did a deep dive into the 2 different sources of education spending. And the first one is the Legislative Budget Board that comes out and is responsible for the budgeting of the entire state in all different sectors. And then the Texas Education Agency, and found that their numbers did not add up. There was an over $21 billion discrepancy. And the methodology was flawed because LBB was using the total population growth. And as we know, Texas is booming while our public school population growth is not booming. It is not growing at the same rate that the general population is. And so looking at it, we can see that TEA's numbers that show that we spent in the 2022-2023 school year, the expenditures across the state averaged $16,792 per child. Do you see that as being underfunded?
No, and that's nowhere near what the opponents of school choice would ever say we're getting. But look, why is there a discrepancy? I mean, we need to figure out what the real numbers are. How can we discuss or debate these numbers if they're not accurate? That's a problem. Of course, I could see where, those that are against the parents, rather, that are for that bureaucracy, the current system that's extremely broken, appreciate having these numbers skewed.
Yeah.
So they can lie about it, and it needs to be exposed. And hopefully, thank you for you guys even doing the research and figuring this out. It was really, really important. Whenever it came out, we were getting texts all over the place about the discrepancy. Why? Not just what's the truth, but why? Why is it so off?
Yeah.
And have they been that far apart in the past? Have we had issues of the current debate that was wrong in sessions prior to this? And what the answer is going forward?
Yeah, I think the data does show us that we can go back to 2016. At least that's as far back as we went, and to see that you can see the percentage of difference ranges between TEA and the Legislative Budget Board. We'll have this for viewers, but you can see it ranges from 6% to 33%, where there is a difference in the billions of dollars that are being spent for our kids. And it's really important because for me, the 4 pillars of parent empowerment, it starts with transparency. And I'm constantly talking to parents about the fact that they need to know, they have a right to know what's being taught to their children and why. So we have seen a lot of this leftist Marxist ideology that's creeped into our classrooms. We're breaking kids up by their hair color or doing privilege walks where we're standing them up on the baseline and saying, if you have 2 parents at home, take 2 steps forward. If your parents went to college, take 2 steps forward. And you're creating this victim versus victimizer narrative that is playing out. But as important is that transparency into taxpayer dollars and how they're being spent. And that, to me, is one of the most crucial aspects of what we need to be taking on. Is we spend nearly $100 billion on public education, and we still have less than 50% of our kids reading on grade level. That's a crisis of epic proportions. Yeah. And so I think it's important to know, why are the numbers off? How can we ensure that the agencies that are responsible for giving you all the information are reconciled?
No, I'm just curious, what are they spending their money on? Why is it so hard to find out what their check registers are? Technology should have made this a whole lot easier. And budgets between each ISD sometimes differ in the style and the way some give more detail. It's pretty transparent that the superintendent, took a limo in Vegas, whereas another one, it's just maybe some travel expense and it's hidden. So there's a long way to go in terms of transparency. With that's part of empowering parents to make the decisions they want to make. And how else are they going to make those choices if they don't have all the data in front of them?
Right. That's right. Accurate numbers that are coming out from trusted entities. I'm with you. Also in transparency, understanding who's in the legislature advocating for you, whether I would say that you are there to be an advocate for HD 128.
Not the lobbyists the local governments hire?
No, I don't think that those people should be there advocating, and certainly not using inaccurate numbers to skew the data and the facts.
Yeah, it's troubling.
Yeah, it is troubling. And something that I saw recently, it was interesting. There was some transparency issues in the recent elections in your district where there was some alleged electioneering going on. Huffman ISD, I believe. I think
Superintendent Benny Swallow got caught doing some electioneering.
Yeah, I found it quite interesting that if our listeners are unfamiliar, he was filmed by his own teachers. He called a meeting and told the teachers effectively that they need to vote for candidates who would, quote, stand for public education. And it's really interesting that those happen to be the candidates that stood against empowering parents.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what Mr. Schwala was doing, and plenty of others around the state.
Yeah.
He's one of the ones that got caught and got his hand slapped. Frankly, I'm not fully sure, if he learned from it. This morning there was a vote in Huffman ISD about raising taxes. They proposed to go up to 25%. Now they're much lower than that. We're still waiting to find out what the real numbers are. But I asked the superintendent about it, and he blamed the school board. Right, and you find this across the board where superintendents really are the ones running the shows in the dark. And again, we need more transparency on that of how they're really running things. Right, the trainings that those school board members are getting through TASB and other stuff. Still, really, if parents don't have the full picture and us as policymakers don't really understand everything that's going on, it still seems like Texas public education is being run from a back room and a smoke-filled room.
Yeah. Yeah, we hear that all the time from even great, courageous school board members who you've run for office multiple times. I mean, it takes a toll on individuals and their families, and it's a sacrifice. And I hear these school board members who will say, I ran for this office because I wanted to do what was best for the kids in my community. And then they realize that they're getting the guidance out of organizations such as the Texas Association of School Boards, TASB, and they're pushing that down into their superintendents. And there's this misunderstanding, I would say likely intentional misunderstanding, that the school boards answer to the superintendents versus the fact that the superintendents serve the school boards who are elected to represent the districts and the kids and the teachers there. And that is something that we are constantly encountering, is how come there's this disconnect. I actually had a school board member tell me recently that if they call the Texas Association of School Boards and ask a question, that they are directed to go through their superintendent.
Interesting chain of command. No, that's problematic.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are adopting the budget to fund TASB.
Yes, it is.
Look, there's some reforms needed on superintendent contracts for sure. We got to stop those golden parachutes, and gosh, the amount of money they make, and the idea that the education foundations can have money that's non-transparent, that's buying cars and planes and houses and things for these superintendents. That's a problem.
It is a problem, and I do hope that there are great leaders like yourself in the legislature that are going to try and take on some of the opaqueness of the spending. And to your point, I mean, we have superintendents across Texas that are making over $500,000 a year, and then they're set up to make, just so through the TRS system, the way that it's calculated, they're set up to make, right now, the cap is $330,000 a year for administrators. If you cross over that threshold, they take your highest paying 3 years. So if you're a superintendent and you're making $500,000 a year for 3 years, right now, you're able to retire with $330,000
even
a
if
year.
you leave during a scandal.
Correct. And we're looking right now at this Fort Worth ISD, who, it's interesting, back when I had the opportunity to travel with the governor across the state to educate parents, and I remember going to Midland ISD, and I had a group of parents come up to me after our event and tell me about the problems with their superintendent and how they were so grateful that she was leaving. And I hear this all the time, so I listened and whatever, and then I realized, oh, that's the superintendent that went to Fort Worth ISD that was, I guess, let go, and then given a nearly $1 million payout to be something in communications or advocacy, right? And qualify for this massive golden parachute at taxpayer expense. I think.
Look, we've been talking for a few years now about superintendents getting these golden parachutes, and nothing's been done. Hopefully, thanks to you guys bringing awareness to it, maybe the legislature will do some action.
I hope so. I always find it crazy to think about, well, you're a part-time legislator. Y'all make, what, $600 a month or something. And that's how it is set up on the biennium. But even our leadership across the state, the governor makes $150-something thousand a year. The president of the United States makes $450,000 a year. How in the world are we using taxpayer dollars to pay these superintendents these outrageous amounts of money, particularly when they're not performing?
Mm-hmm. That's all part of this massive education industry, right? When I was at school, it's really an anomaly we've only seen over the last 10 years. We've got these massive administrative buildings now. They're housing things, right? Many communities would be a closed grocery store or something like that, but they're buying up land and adding more bureaucrats daily, and it's part of our problem.
It is part of the problem.
Legislation looking into it, but thankfully, I think there's a movement just nationwide that's starting to question things.
Yeah.
There used to be this idea that you just never questioned anything of what the schools were doing, and that's probably because there was no transparency in it. Thankfully, the tech world, our modern day, we're going to see those things. But we also see the bad stuff, but parents are waking up to it.
Yeah. So tell me about what your priorities are in the legislative session as it relates to the transparency. What do you think is most important for both transparency and empowering parents? So you talked about the education savings account. They must be universal, right? Not just in eligibility, but we got to talk about the appropriation. We got to make sure that any family that wants to access it can access it, right? And then we also have to talk about opening up the books, the financial books, the actual books in the library that have some of this inappropriate material. But what else do you see as being priorities? What are you hoping to tackle in this new legislative session with a whole new crop of conservatives that are ready to stand firm and really, really fight back against a system?
Yeah, the great thing is we've got some, 30 plus kind of new conservatives that are becoming in the House that have, they just got off a campaign trail. They've got fresh ideas. They've heard things that maybe I haven't heard. And that's a great thing. We've got this new blood with new ideas, and I think that's going to be following some of those trails to see what they've just learned off the trail, right? So, of course, putting school library books online is a no-brainer. They're already on a computer. Why on earth can't everybody see it? I mean, it's already in a system. Let's make it accessible, right? And the same thing for all the other financials. They notify parents constantly. Why can't they just log in on an app to see what's going on? And I'd like to see just transparency when teachers have issues, that everybody notified about it. And especially with the employment issues, people need to be notified there as well. Yeah. When things go down, and they try and kind of keep it all secret or brush things under the rug. So we're gonna kind of shine light on that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Talking about the teachers of Texas, so many of them tell me how frustrated they are. They say, it's not the pay. I didn't go into teaching because I ever thought I was going to make a whole bunch of money. I mean, I want to be able to pay my bills, but they have a heart for it. And unfortunately, the system, with the guidance of a lot of far left-leaning entities, has stripped teachers of their power to be able to discipline in their classroom, to be backed up by their administration. They're constantly told they can't do something because there's a litigious nature of different organizations that will sue. So I do think that it's really important. Part of the parent empowerment movement is recognizing this empowers teachers as well. Teachers to push back and say, we're going to learn in this classroom. And if this isn't the right environment for every child, if there's a child that's a problem and needs a more structured or some other environment, we need to facilitate that, because in my classroom, we're going to have order and discipline. And that way we can actually teach. That's what teachers want to do.
I think that's what these programs do, is they don't just empower parents and children. It's empowering teachers, because they now have options and negotiating room with their ISDs.
That's right.
And we've seen studies that report that exact thing, right? And so people say, oh, well, these private schools only pay teachers blank. Well, that teacher chose that for a reason, for their own mental health and all these other reasons. Let them have those options.
Right. That's right. I hear this all the time, not just in the education space when we're talking about, the left likes to talk about the gender pay gap constantly about, that women make X amount of dollars. I don't know, they changed the numbers, but basically implying that women don't make as much money as men. And the reality of that, and it's the same thing with teachers make choices based on what's best for their lives and their families. And if you want to be in a private education that is faith-based, or you want to be in a specific type of environment or a school that's STEM or whatever, that gives teachers who have a passion for that the ability to do it as well, and do it oftentimes negotiating for more pay, because right now we have a salary schedule.
Yeah, look, let them compete for talent.
That's right.
Come on.
That's right. Teachers will be better off for it, because now there won't be a monopsony or a one place for them to go sell their services. They've got many. Mm-hmm. So all of this it is a rising tide that will lift all boats, not just the kids and their lives, but also the teachers and what they're looking for, pay and environment.
There's also business opportunities for these teachers of starting micro schools or small private schools in some of these areas they don't have it.
Right.
That's the solution.
Yeah.
So we need to create these opportunities for schools to be started, give teachers options of their career development, and at the same time, the stars are the limit for Texas children if we can get universal school choice.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about what you hear when you're in your district. Obviously, you're busy with 5 young kids, you and your wife, homeschooling them. But when you are there concerns, or are you mostly hearing from parents that are just excited about the opportunities, or what do you hear from your own constituents?
Yeah, I can't think of how often I get a negative comment on school choice from a parent that doesn't work for the government. Right, like that's truly something they've learned on their own. Usually it's just kind of questions, and I get to dispel myths. Right, you kind of automatically know where they've been getting their information from through using the word voucher. Like, I automatically know when a school board member is using the word voucher, talking about how it's bad for the ISD, that 1, it's an opportunity to correct the record. But 3, it means they have no idea what they're talking about. Right, and so thankfully TPPF and others were trying to get the truth out there of what this bill really does, or what education savings accounts are really all about. And so when faced with that opportunity, we get to empower people, and yes, they want it. It's amazing. Non-political families, when they're learning about it, they become engaged on politics because of this issue. I've found. Yeah. This is the one reason they see hope. Because they love their children that much. They've stayed out of politics until this thing. This is the thing that brought them to the table.
I think that's a great point. We talked about Florida earlier, and we can see that when Governor DeSantis was running, 8 years ago now, 6 years ago, when he ran for governor against Andrew Gillum, there was an entirely new voting bloc. It was low income, mainly African-American mothers who had their children in these in private schools, and the Democrat candidate said, yes, I'm going to end this, and they said, oh no, because ultimately I'm a single issue voter. There's a whole lot of issues I really care about and I will absolutely look at, but I'm going to vote for my kids first and foremost every single time, right now and for their future. And I think most parents, that love that we feel, that transcends race, it transcends socioeconomic. Parents, when they know, they will do the same.
Yeah. That completely tracks other studies. I may recall some of the original ones that got me really excited about school choice was things studying demographics, single females, low income, who had never talked to their children's teacher, had never visited the school, and all of a sudden given this option, they're now calling the public school and the private school and saying, why should I choose you? What can you do for my child? That person's now shown up to the polls, man. Like they're single issue voter. That's why you talk to their child's school. Without an option, there was no reason to. Yeah. Because it was take it or leave it. This is what you have. Right. Why would you call?
That's right. Right. You don't have a choice here.
So we're seeing that now.
Or a voice. Yeah. I think that is one of the most encouraging things, is that it does give that power back to parents, even if they want to choose that public school. But they want to choose the public school that doesn't have porn in their libraries, or that isn't teaching radical leftist ideologies and whatnot. It does give them that ability to ask questions and know that they can vote with their feet and say, I'm going to choose something else if necessary. Well, so tell us a little bit about what do you expect to see? We're here in the fall, leading up to the 89th legislative session. Y'all gavel in, I think, January 14th. And what do you hope to see with the movement of the education savings accounts legislation? Give us kind of your best prediction or hopeful outlook.
Look, hey, my hopeful outlook is something to come out of the House before the Senate. I know it's a pipe dream, but it's something to shoot for. Shoot for the stars. It needs to move early. No waiting to the last minute. Everything else can wait. The reason we kept coming back last session needs to be handled first and sooner than later. It's really that simple. That way we can't say we spent all the money already or anything else. It's all up front and easy, and it's a great carrot to hold over anybody that needs some motivation. It's really simple.
Yeah.
Let's take care of the thing that we said we're going to take care of, and then we can look at other options.
How do you think your colleagues feel about that? You think everybody's on the same train?
No, but it doesn't matter how they feel about it. Doing the right thing is all that matters.
Right.
And so this is a civil rights issue of our time. It's really that simple. So it should take priority. Let's get it done.
I love it. So before we wrap up here, I would love for you to look in that camera and talk to the parents of Texas, talk to the patriots of Texas that see something's wrong. Something's not right in our entire system. We want to preserve and protect the freedoms that we have and make sure that we pass it down to our children so that they understand and can do the same. Talk to them and tell them why that they should support the parent empowerment movement, but why they should get involved and make sure that, to your hope, and hopefully it's an accurate prediction, that empowering parents moves swiftly. Talk to them and tell them how they can get involved and why they must get involved.
Well, the subject matter of empowering parents, of course, is about you. It's the reason we're sitting here today having this discussion, is that our heart and our full desires is that parents all across Texas, no matter where level of education or how much money they've got in their bank account, can give their children an opportunity that they never dreamed of, an opportunity they didn't have, an opportunity I didn't have, which was to be able to be homeschooled if my parents so chose, or go to a private school, or go to a school that fit my needs, or learn something that my public school didn't offer, right? All of these therapies and alternatives, they're actually not just cheaper for the parent or the taxpayer, but it's more affordable for everybody. Look, here's what I do want to empower you with. If you're not sure where your position is on universal education savings accounts for all children, and you're hearing things and they're using the word voucher, they don't know what they're talking about. That's my biggest tip. If you hear people telling you should oppose vouchers, that person doesn't know what they're talking about, because this bill is not a voucher. If it was, I'd join you in opposing it. What I'm asking you to do is join us in supporting educational savings accounts for every child in Texas. And how do we get there? We get there by, one, you doing more than just watching this video. You're going to talk to your state representative, your senator, heck, even tell your school board members they should be sending letters of support for this issue.
Representative Cain, thank you for joining us today to talk about the parent empowerment movement that swept Texas. Thank you for all that you do to support parents, to support kids and teachers so that we can completely revitalize our education system as a whole. So grateful for all the great work that you do. Excited to see you help usher this legislation across the finish line in the 89th legislative session. Thank you for joining us today on Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin. And now you have the power.